Masechet Baba Batra, Daf Nun Dalid. We're going to see 5 laws about acquiring land or trees or things on land, and then we're going to see one story in that regard. Amar Rav Yirmiyah Bira'a, Amar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yirmiyah Bira'a says in the name of Rav Yehuda, Hai man dishta lifta befilet de ar'a de ger, lahave chazaka. My tama, bidana dishta lahave shebacha. Hashta de kashabach, memela kashabach. These 5 laws are all going to be about acquiring property that is ownerless. It was owned by someone who was a convert, and this convert had no heirs, even if he had biological family before he converted. But once he converted, so that's his biological family is no longer his legal family, and if he has no children after he converted, so he dies without heirs. Therefore, this land is ownerless. Whoever comes and does an act of acquisition upon it will own it. So chazakah here means a single act of acquisition, and so we're going to have to define what is that. We saw before that locking the gate, building the wall, making a breach in the wall, those were typical of examples. But the first law here is about what if you take some turnip seeds and you throw it into the crevices of the land. And you don't plow the land, you don't turn it over, you don't cover it up. If you plow the land or do anything like that, that's improving the land. So if you improve the land, that's a way of acquiring it here. But here you just threw turnip seeds and then they grew. That does not make a chazakah. What's the reason? Because at the time that he did an act and threw the seeds into the crevices, there was no enhancement of the field. He just threw them in. So it doesn't that by itself did not enhance the field. Now, eventually they did grow, and having growing turnips is a benefit. But at the time that they grew, it grew by itself, right? That's just a natural process that happened, not by his effort. So because at the time that he did something, it was not improved. When it was improved, it was happening by itself, not because of his effort at that time. So therefore, it doesn't count. In other words, you have to do something for the land that at that very moment that you're acting, it improves the land. Like if you plow some part of the land, so then you're improving the land right at that moment. That's the first law. Rav Yehuda said the rest are all going to be in the name of Shemuel. Amar Shemuel, Haiman shach dikla, adata de dikla kane, adata de hayvata la kane. So we're going to see the same act can either acquire it or not acquire it, depending on the details of the act and how he's doing it and why he's doing it. So someone comes to a palm tree and cuts some of the branches. If it's to benefit the palm tree, he's pruning the palm tree, taking off these some weak branches so that it will grow better. Well, that's improving the tree, so then that's an act of acquisition. But if he wants to take these branches to feed to animals, he doesn't care about the tree, he just wants the branches, then that's not an act of acquisition, because he's not doing it to benefit the tree. Now, hechidame, how can you tell which one he's doing? Shekal mehai gisa data de dikla, kula mehad gisa data de chevata. So if you see that he's cutting some branches from this side of the tree and from that side of the tree, then that shows that he cares about improving the tree, that he's going all around it to take off all the weak branches, prune it, and that benefits the tree. But if he takes all the branches only from one side, then that makes it obvious that he cares just to feed the animals. And so it's easier just to cut everything from one side, collect it there from one side. But it would not benefit the tree because he's neglecting any weak branches that are on the other side. V'amar Shemuel, Haiman dezakeh zichiyah adata dar'a kaneh, adata desibe la kaneh. If someone clears away a field of all the trees. So if he's doing it to improve the field because he wants to plow the field and seed things there, well, then that's improving the field, so he acquires the field. But if he's clearing away the wood because he wants the wood, he wants to use it to make a fire or something, then that does not improve the field, so he does not acquire the field thereby. Hechidame, now how could you tell which one he's doing? Shekal rabrebe vezutare adata dar'a. If he takes both the big trees and the big piece of wood and the small pieces of wood, then it's obvious that he cares about the land. He wants to clear away the land, and so that's why he's taking away the little ones also. But if he only takes away the big pieces of wood and leaves the little pieces of wood, then it's obvious that he only cares about the wood. That's why he wants the big ones. He wants those are good for building or for burning. Those little twigs he doesn't need, and so he leaves them. So that's how you could tell. If he takes everything, even the little twigs, and he's doing it in order to clear away the field. He doesn't want anything in the way. ואמר שמואל, הימן דאתקיל תקלה, adata de'ar'a kaneh, adata de'be'dareh la kaneh. If someone removes mounds on the land, right, there are the mounds of dirt. So it depends. If he's doing it in order to improve the land, he wants to make the land nice and level so that then he can plow and plant things there, then he acquires the land. But if he wants to make the land into a threshing ground, then not so. See, a threshing ground, you need somewhat flat, but not enough to be totally flat to have a threshing floor. And a threshing floor, although it's using the land, it's not improving the land. If someone uses the land, that would be beneficial for the other type of chazakah of 3 years, right? I used the land for 3 years and no one said anything. But here we're talking about an acquisition of the land, and for that, it's not simply enough to use the land as you would by using it for a threshing floor. You actually have to improve the land in order to acquire it. Hechidame, how can you tell which one he's doing? Shekal mulya ushta benasa adata dar'a. Mulya b'mulya benasa benasa adata debedare. So if he takes the mound of dirt and he puts it in the ditch, right? There's mounds and there's ditches. So he'll take a shovel, he'll take the mounds, and he'll carry them to the ditches to fill up the ditches. And that way, he's overturning the land, which is beneficial for it, and he's making it really nice and smooth. So then it's obvious that he is doing it in order to benefit the land. However, if he's just taking the mound and making the mound bigger, in other words, let's say the mound is high, he smashes it down so that it takes up more space, it's not as high. Or the ditches, he just spreads them out. He kind of kicks some dirt around so that the ditch is not as deep, so it might be wider but not as deep, so that it's more or less even, which is sufficient for a threshing floor. So that would show that he wants to make a threshing floor. It does not benefit the land for growing, and so that's how you could tell. ואמר שמואל, הימן דפתח מיה בהרעה, דעתה דהרעה קנה, דעתה דחברה לה קנה. Shemuel says, further, this is the fifth law, that if someone opens a water source onto a field, so it depends. If he wants to benefit the field by irrigating the field, then that's an act of acquisition. But if he's putting the water in the field, he's directing water from a river onto the field because he wants to catch the fish, then that doesn't benefit the field, so he does not acquire it. How could you tell? So if he opens 2 gates, one brings in the water and one lets the water out, then he wants the fish. He wants this river water to go through the field, and it'll go through the field and be very shallow, and the fish will stay on the ground, and that way he can easily pick up the fish. Is an easy way to catch fish. So then, if the water is just going right through the field and leaving the fish there, it's obvious that he wants the fish. But if he only opens 1 gate and not 2, so then the water is coming into the land and staying in the land. That's because he wants to irrigate it, and irrigation improves the land. Hahi itita. Now we have a story. Dachala dikla betafshicha telesar shenin. Ata hu rafik tute purta. A certain woman, she cut branches from a palm tree for 13 years. All the time, every year, she would come and take some branches from the palm tree. And this was an ownerless tree beforehand. It belonged to a convert who died and without heirs. And so she assumed that she acquired the tree by taking from it every year. But then some other guy came after 13 years and he just plowed a little bit under the tree. Now this man, he claims that he got ownership of the tree by plowing. The case came before Levi. Some say the case came before Mordukva to judge it. And the judge put it in the hands of the man who just plowed a little bit for one time, and rather than give it to the woman who was taking branches from it for 13 years. So the woman, understandably, came in and she's shouting in front of the judge, right? How could you do this? I've been using this tree for 13 years. This is my tree. I acquired it. How could you give it to this guy who just came and plowed for 2 minutes? Amar la, my avid lach, tela achazekat kid machzeke inashe. And the judge says, what can I do for you? You did not take possession in the way that people are supposed to take possession. It's true, you did take for 13 years, but that just means that you wanted to take the branches, to use the branches. You did not do anything to improve the tree. And that was the common denominator of the laws that we just saw, that you have to do something to improve the land or improve the tree in order to acquire it. Just using it for getting benefit from it, taking from it, is not sufficient to do this kind of chazakah, a chazakah that makes an acquisition. So, it was a tree that belonged to nobody, and you took the branches. You were permitted to take the branches, but that was not an official, recognized act of acquisition. Amarav hasar surah b'nichse hager kana derav la kana legineta deberav ela besurata. And now one more way of acquiring, if someone paints an image on a wall of a property that belonged to a convert. A convert had a house, and he died without heirs. So we saw earlier, if someone puts some finishing touches on it, like hangs the doors on it, so Rav says, if you paint a picture on the wall, a nice picture of flowers or something, then that is an acquisition. And in fact, Rav did this himself. How did he acquire the garden of the house of Rav? This might be, Rav it would be referring to Rav. That would belong to somebody else before, but then he acquired it, and now it's called Be'Rav, the house of the Amorah Rav. But Be'Rav can also mean a Bet Midrash. Meaning any rabbi. So he acquired the garden of the Bet Midrash by drawing an image there, and that's how he acquired it. So he actually did this halacha himself. So as long as you improve something, and in the case of a property that has walls, if you improve it by painting an image on it on one of the walls, then that is considered an act of acquisition. Itemar, שדה מסוימת במסריה, אמר רב הונא אמר רב, כיוון שהקיש בה מקוש אחד, קנה כולה, ושמואל אמר, לא קנה אלא מקום מקושו בלבד. So another law about acquiring a field, but this time we have a machloket. If you have a field that has definite boundaries, it's very clear, right? The north, west, east, south boundaries are clearly delineated. So according to Rav, if you want to acquire it, all you have to do is strike the land with a hoe one time. Just take one shovelful, kind of like those ceremonial golden shovels of the executive that starts a project, right? He puts one shovel into the ground. That's it, right? He shows that he is in charge. He owns this project, so that's all you have to do to acquire land. Since it has definite boundaries, even though he's only doing one little shovelful, it's clear that what he means is to acquire the entire boundary, all the way to those boundary markers. Shmuel, however, says, no, that's not sufficient. If you just put your hoe in one little spot, then all you acquire is that one little spot. If you want to acquire the whole thing, then you're going to have to do some more work. And now we ask, according to Rav, what if the boundaries are not defined? According to Shmuel, that's easy. If when it is defined, you only acquire that shovelful, so all the more so if the boundaries are not defined. But according to Rav, who says that you acquire the whole field that's defined, if there are no boundary markers, so then what are you going to do? You're going to put the shovel into the ground, you're going to acquire the entire country? Like where it has to end? Amar Papa kide azil tayara de shore vehadar. And Papa says you get as far as the ox driver goes and comes back. In other words, you get one furrow there and back, one lap return trip. So as wide as a ox will make a furrow all the way to the length of the land and back, so basically 2 furrows long. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shemuel, Nichse goy hare hen kemidbar, kol mahzik bahen zacha bahen. My ta'ama, goy meki matu zuze lide, istalak le, Israel la kane, ad demate shetara lide, hilkach hare hen kemidbar, V'kol hamachazik bahen zacha bahen. So Rav Yehuda says the name of Shemuel. Rav Yehuda was one of the main students of Shemuel. That the property of a non-Jew is like a desert, and it's in terms of the law that anyone who goes and takes possession of it gets it. Now, this does not mean literally, as it sounds, that anyone can just go and take any land that belongs to a non-Jew, do an act of acquisition and take it. He means specifically in a case where that non-Jew sold that property to a Jew. However, the Jew did not yet take acquisition, and someone else jumps in the meantime and takes it, as Gemara will explain. What is the meaning of this? What is the reason for it? Because a non-Jew, generally in their laws and their customs, once the money gets to the hands of the seller, that's it. He relinquishes property. So when a non-Jew sells land, he's selling this land for $100,000. He gets the money. Okay, not my land anymore. He relinquishes ownership. However, a Jew does not acquire the land until he has a deed. A deed comes into his hands, because that's the general practice in Jewish law, that he acquires it by taking a deed. And therefore, we have a gap in between, where, let's say, they met in an office, and the Jewish buyer gives money over to the non-Jewish seller. The non-Jewish seller is very happy. All right, it's not my land anymore. That's it. So it doesn't belong to him. However, the Jew does not actually acquire it until he gets a deed, and he hasn't done that yet. He hasn't even done an act of acquisition on the land. So if at that point someone else, another Jew, comes along and makes an acquisition, digs a furrow, locks the gate, then that other Jew will take it, because it doesn't belong to the Jewish buyer yet, and it doesn't belong to the non-Jewish seller anymore. And so therefore, that's why Shmuel said it's like a desert, and anyone who comes and takes it can keep it. It's not a very nice thing to do, to go and swoop in, or just at that vulnerable time, and take someone else's land, but technically there's no owner. So therefore, technically, if someone comes in the middle, then they are the rightful owner. Amar le Abaye le Rav Yosef. Mi amar Shmuel hachi, v'amar Shmuel dina de malchuta dina, umalka amar la likanera ela be'igartaha. So Abaye asks Rav Yosef about this ruling of Shmuel, and that Rav Yudah said in his name. Did Shmuel really say that? How could it be? It seems to contradict another statement of Shmuel, because Shmuel says that the law of the land is the law. When it comes to civil, monetary laws, then you have to follow the law of the land. And so the king made a decree, and the king's law of this land is that one should only acquire land through a document with a deed. And therefore, the second Jew who came and swooped in and took it should not be the rightful owner. It should be the buyer. He'll get a deed, and when he gets a deed, then he's going to have to be signed by the seller and by witnesses, and so he gets the deed, and then it will be his. So therefore, it doesn't make sense. We have a contradiction. How could Shmuel say that it's like a ownerless property, and anyone who comes and takes it, just by doing an act of acquisition? But the law of the land is the law, and the king says that the law of the land is that you need a deed. So therefore, it should be that the rightful buyer gets it as soon as he gets the deed, even if someone else comes and tries to take it in between. That's a good challenge. Abaya asks Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef answers, Amar le'ana layadana, ubada hava bedura dera'ava, b'Yisrael dizban ar'a migoy, v'ata Yisrael acharina rafik be'purta, ata lekameh de Rav Yehuda, okma bida deshaneh. And so Rav Yosef says, I don't know about this law that you're telling me. Not that he never heard of the principle of Dina de Malchuta Dina. He probably did and knows about it. But he's saying, listen, I can't answer your question in terms of what Shmuel said in some other case, but I can testify that there was an actual case just like this one over here, and Rav Yehuda ruled in accordance with this ruling. The case it happened in Dura of the shepherds, that's the name of the place, Dura Dera Avata, regarding a Jew who bought land from a non-Jew. And then he gave over the money, the buyer gave over the money to the seller. So the non-Jew, the seller non-Jew, he relinquished ownership. And then another Jew, a second Jew, came in and he plowed a little bit of it. That was sufficient to make an act of acquisition. And so the second guy claims, I acquired it after it had no owner. And the first guy says, no, I mean, I'm the buyer. Look, I paid for it. And the case came before Rav Yehuda, who said this in the name of Shmuel in the first place, and he gave it to the second Jew, the one who did an act of acquisition after the money was paid, but before any document was given. So Rav Yosef says, listen, I know about this case, and Rav Yehuda did rule like this in accordance with Shemuel. So you're asking a good question. I don't know about that law and how it applies, but I do know that this is a real story that happened. Amar le, Dura de Ravata, Ka'amart. Abaye says, oh, that is your proof? That case that happened in Dura, that was founded by shepherds. I know about that case, and you don't have the full story. That case is not a proof. Hatam bagem mitamere havu dein hu gufaihu lahavu yahave taska lemalka umalka amar mandi yahiv taska lechul ar'a. That was talking about fields that were concealed. In other words, those owners, the sellers, that non-Jewish seller, he never recorded those fields on the official books of the government because he was trying to hide them from paying taxes. And so, since he didn't want to pay taxes, he's not recorded, he's hiding them. Now, the law of the land is that the king said, someone who does not pay tax cannot use the land. Only someone who pays the tax, he can come and take the land. So those owners, meaning the sellers, since they were hiding this field and they did not pay the tax to the king, therefore they lost their right from the dinah de malchuta dinah, from the law of the king. They lost their right to it. And the king says, anyone who pays the land tax, they can come and use the field and profit from it. That was the law of the land. And so because they were trying to hide it, right, they're trying to get away from paying some taxes, and in the end, they got fined, and they lost the field altogether. That's what happened. So here's the story. You have these non-Jews who owned this land, but they weren't paying taxes, weren't telling the government about the land. And now this non-Jew sold this land to a Jew. He got the money. But some other Jew came first and agreed to pay the taxes to the government, and he went and took possession of the land. That is valid because the non-Jew who sold it actually lost his right to the land a long time ago when he didn't pay the land tax before and tried to conceal it. So actually it wasn't even his to begin with. The law of the land is in accordance with this story. The law of the land says whoever comes first and pays the tax and can go and use it. And this second Jew is the one that did that. So that's why they gave it to the second Jew. That was a special case of land that was concealed. But this story is not a proof for this law, and therefore Abaye's question stands, and actually the story is a proof for Abaye's position of quoting Shemuel that says Dina de Malchuta Dina. Right? They were acting simply in accordance with the law of the land. Now we have another story that relates both to this halacha and the machloket between Rav and Shemuel that we saw earlier. Rav Huna zeban ar'a migoy, ata Yisrael acher rafik ba purta, ata lekamed Rav Nachman ukma bide. So Rav Huna bought land from a non-Jew. He paid the money to the non-Jew. The non-Jew was very happy. He relinquished his right to his possession of his ownership of the land. But Rav Huna did not yet take possession of the land, did not yet get a deed. And another second Jew came and he plowed just a little bit of it. He took a shovel, took one shovelful, moved it around, and he claimed, oh look, I took possession of it, and it didn't belong to anybody because the non-Jew already was paid and already gave up his ownership, and Rav Huna didn't take it yet. So the case came to Rav Nachman for adjudication, and he said the second Jew can keep it, the one who just put the shovel in the ground in one spot. אמר לה, מה דעתיך? דאמר שמואל נכסי גוי, הרי הן כמדבר, וכל המחזיק בהם זכה. So Rav Huna is challenging Rav Nachman's ruling. And he says, what are you following? Are you following the law of Shemuel that we just said, that the property of a non-Jew is like that of a desert? Anyone who comes and takes it first can take it. Once the non-Jew gets paid, they give up their ownership, and then anyone else can take it. And that's why you gave it to the second Jew? Is that why you're ruling in as you did? Well, in that case, be consistent. Then follow Shemuel in the other statement that he said. For Shemuel said that if you have a piece of land that with well-defined boundaries, and someone puts a hoe into the land, they only acquire that spot where the hoe is, not the whole thing. So this guy came, the second Jew. It's true, he put his hoe into the land, But so fine, follow Shemuel that this is ownerless property. It's like a desert, and give him that 1 square foot of land. That's all. So you should be consistent according to Shemuel. If you're following in one law, follow him in the other law as well. Good challenge. Amale behai ana kishma'atin sebirali. Tamaravuna amarav. However, Rav Nachman says, no, in this we follow our tradition, that we follow the halacha, what that Rav Huna said in the name of Rav, that if once you put the hoe in one part of the land, if it's a well-defined property, then you acquire the whole thing. I don't have to be consistent. For this halacha, we follow Shemuel. For the other halacha, our tradition is we follow Rav. And so the halacha is both like Shemuel, that it's like ownerless property because the non-Jew got the money, you didn't acquire it yet, so he has a right to do an act of acquisition. And I also follow Shemuel that just putting a shovel in one spot acquires the whole thing. So sorry, you're out of luck. Lastly, Shalach Rav Huna bar Avin. Yisrael shalakach sedem migoy ba Yisrael ached vechezik ba en mosi'in ota miyado. Rav Huna sent the following. Rav Huna bar Avin, not the same Rav Huna, sent a ruling that if a Jew buys a field from a non-Jew, and in the middle of the transaction, money was already transferred, but the deed was not given yet. If a second Jew comes and makes an act of acquisition, then the second Jew keeps the land as in accordance with Shemuel. And in fact, all these sages and all the sages agreed that in this matter that the halacha follows Shemuel. Baruch Adonai leolam. Amen v'amen.